How are you, Abigail?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. Abigail and I are getting to know each other, and I asked her if she likes Abby or Abigail. She says that she does not care. So I may fluctuate between Abby and Abigail. We'll see.
Sounds good to me. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Thanks for being here. You are a Pasadena hairdresser who focuses on platinum hair and extensions, and you're the founder of Hair Painter's Instagram account, which is one of those big Instagram accounts. And I'm sure that many other things that you've been doing in this industry, and that's what we're going to get into. But did I short you at all in that introduction?
No, I mean that sounds pretty good. Sounds right. Yeah.
Very good. Are you like educating for anybody, or has anyone sponsored you?
I kind of taken a break with working with companies right now. I'm kind of just doing my own thing and still trying to find like products that I really love. I love trying new things. And as for education, I've started teaching my own classes and sometimes I teach with others as well, which is pretty fun.
Oh, okay. Super cool.
Yeah.
Okay, before we get into all that kind of stuff, let's start at the beginning. And for the audience, I asked Abigail if she's been to Italy, and because I'm Italian, my dad is Italian, and I have an Italian last name for the listeners who know me the best. And of course, Bazzoli is Italian, and she launched into how she's from Sicily. And I said, okay, wait a second, we're gonna save this for the podcast. Okay, so now, where are you from? You're from Sicily, but tell us
Mhm.
about all of that, and then bring us to how you got into hair.
So I was born in Palermo, Sicily. It's a really beautiful island south of Italy. And I've lived there off and on, but we moved to the United States when I was two, specifically Minnesota. And I was there for probably till I was like 17 or 18. And we would go back and forth between the United States and Sicily because of family until we moved there permanently for like 2 years in 2003. And I did middle school there. And then after
Wait, hold
that,
on. You
my
moved
family
to
decided to move back
you moved to Minnesota?
to Sicily.
To Sicily. Got it.
So yeah, I moved from, yep. So when I was like 10, moved back to Sicily, and that's where I did some school there, and had to relearn Italian kind of because we spoke English at home. So English is my first language, and I had really great memories there. So I was really sad when we had to move back, but we moved back to Minnesota, and we stayed there till I was about 18. And that's when I kind of had to decide what I wanted to do with school. I really loved animals, so my first thought was I
Hold on.
wanted to be
Hold
a
on.
vet.
Hold
Yes.
on. I have to know. I definitely want to hear about the animals and the vet, but have
Mhm.
you, obviously Sicily, maybe not obviously, but Sicily is a very beautiful place. I've been there. And the Netflix, is it Netflix or HBO series? What is it? Wild Orchid, Blue Orchid? What is that TV show?
White Lotus.
White Lotus, exactly. I was almost there. Have you seen it, and have you ever been to that place?
Uh, I probably have. I just don't remember it, honestly. But I mean, Palermo is beautiful. I've been
Yeah.
a couple times, but I was a child, so I mean, looking back, I think it's pretty accurate though, like how beautiful it is there and the people. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Amazing. Okay, so
hmm
you came back to Minnesota, and go ahead, continue.
Oh yeah. So had to figure out what I wanted to do for school. So I wanted to be a vet, but it was just not possible for me to go to school for that long because it's like 10 years. And so my
Really?
mom was like, "Oh, yeah, it takes a long time to be a doctor for animals."
Wow.
So my mother kind of was like, "Okay, you have to figure out something." So I tried to do nursing, and that didn't work out. And coming from a very Italian household, like I either, got married and had to like be a stay-at-home mom, or like that was kind of like what we did, like to go to school was like very foreign. So my parents were very open-minded to let me go to school for something. So I ended up
Gotcha.
choosing hair, but I didn't love it at first. But eventually I grew to like it. And so when we moved to Florida, that was about 12 years ago, I went to hair school, no, 11 years ago. So I started in 2012 and I graduated pretty quickly. I think it was like less than a year.
Okay.
Um, and that's how I got kind of started and introduced to the industry.
Okay, so you didn't think you liked it at first, and then you grew to love it. And so, talk about how that happened. Did that happen in school? Did it happen after school? Was there a particular mentor that you had? How did that transition happen?
I feel that like, especially because Instagram was still very new, that doing hair was not something in the Midwest specifically like that you would be encouraged to do by like mentors and your teachers in school. So I kind of already had a negative outlook on it. And I was just like, well, I got to do something to make some money. And I was like, let's just try it out. But it wasn't something that I was passionate about. Like, even though I was artistic, it's not like my first choice. So, unfortunately, that kind of like set the tone as to how I felt in the very beginning. Um, we just got a lot of anxiety working with people, and um, I just didn't love it. Eventually, with the right mentors, I started to enjoy it, but it was different for me. It was less like in the beginning. It was less about artistic. It was more business. So I worked with women that were more old school, and they really valued customer service and those things that like in school I didn't really get to learn a lot about. So it was more of like a business vibe that I got first introduced to with this industry, and then eventually I got to be more artistic and figure out what I actually like to do.
Interesting. That's like the opposite
Yeah,
of many people's experience, right?
yeah.
That with the whole business is oftentimes left out of the early experience, and then people kind of struggle to catch up, thinking about
Mhm.
it like a business. But okay, so that's super cool, and I'm sure you didn't appreciate kind of the business skills that you learned early on, but you probably do now, I'm sure. And so now
Mhm.
you seem to have gotten to a pretty cool level. Okay, so talk about your early days when you got out of school. Like, how did you find the salon, and what were your experiences like?
So I thought I could just get behind the chair right away. Like I was ready for that. I just wanted to make money. Like I'm like I got bills to pay, got credit cards to pay off. So I started to work at a salon at Dillard's, which is kind of like a Macy's. I don't think it's that popular in California, but in Florida it was a pretty like popular store, and they had an Aveda salon inside. So I started out with like front desk, hated that. They couldn't move me faster enough on the floor because they're just like, you're
Hmm.
terrible at this. But I met a lot of good friends there. And so I was there for like a couple months um, until I realized I had a lot to learn. And so I then worked at a different salon. It was an organic salon, which is very different than what I was used to working with Wella, because that's what I learned from. And I was like kind of like front desk, assisting, and that's where I feel like I really learned quite a bit about specifically customer service and just taking care of your clients. Um, how to charge for your time. Like I had a really good support system there. So I had to get experience with like artistically like that part, but I had good mentors that kind of helped me understand like the business and how to treat people. So I was with them for a while. I'm still good friends with them.
Good.
And and then eventually I started working in Daytona Beach, which is where my career really started to flourish. This really cute boutique salon took me in, and that's where I started to do like balayage and highlights, and I got to take all these cool classes. But it really, I think every part of my career served a purpose, and it taught me a lot. And I love that it happened that way for me.
Totally. Okay, so how
Yeah.
long were you at that little cool salon in Daytona Beach?
Like 4 years.
Okay.
4 years. And then I moved to Orlando and I ended up working at Theory Salon. I still see the girls sometimes there. I met Erin Mills, who owns Theory, and I like connected with her immediately. And so I worked there for a minute too, probably like 2.5 years. And that was really cool. And that's where I met a couple people. I didn't ever think I would get into teaching. At that point, I had just started kind of like getting into platinum blonde hair. It was
Hmm.
something I dodged for the longest time. Like when I worked in Daytona, I had clients I would call in wanting platinum blonde, and I was like, that's just not something I do. Until I started doing it and really pushed myself to learn. But it was something that gave me like a lot of stress and anxiety, and so
Hmm.
I'm sure a lot of hairdressers can relate.
Hmm.
Um, but then I started doing more of that kind of work, and I was like, well, this is kind of cool. Like I'm doing something different. But it was definitely self-taught, and also like watching videos of people like Be Seen and Maggie. Really looked up to them. Guy
Hmm.
Tang.
Yeah.
They kind of like inspired me to want to do more of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Very interesting. And so now, of course, I mean, for the listeners, they're like, are you kidding? Abigail was scared of platinum, and now you're like the queen of platinum. I think these are very instructive, for people to hear, and helps them kind of get outside of their comfort zone. And I mean, you probably look back and think about maybe the anxiety that you had, and you kind of wish that maybe you had started earlier, right? And maybe didn't
Mhm.
have that anxiety.
I mean, I'm still scared. I'm not gonna lie. I still get anxious. There's certain projects that I'm like, I should not be doing this. But I think that kind of just also puts into more emphasis how much of a dangerous process this is. And when you push hair to that extreme, there's always that risk of breakage. And so it's taken time, but I'm still learning. I feel like I'm still a student, and I love that because I'm always trying new things. And my clients always know, like, oh, you're trying a new bleach or trying a new toner. And I'm like, yep, gonna see how it
Okay.
looks. So
Okay.
I think it's always good to be open to still learning and changing things up when something doesn't work.
Totally. Okay. So how did you get out to LA?
So I was like, I'm gonna start over. I wanted to like start over with my career,
And hold
and I
on.
met,
Hold on. Why?
yeah,
Like, why did you think to yourself, I feel like I want to start over?
I went through a difficult time in my life during COVID, and it kind of shook me. I kind of had a falling out with somebody, so
Oh,
I really
a
wanted
boyfriend?
to just, well, I could get into it. I don't think he'll be watching. I was married for about a year, and that person, became, when you get married, that person becomes your life.
Yep.
So when we broke up and we separated and divorced, I was like, okay, I'm gonna get out of here. I need to get out of here. I couldn't stand to be in Florida anymore. Mentally and emotionally took a really big toll on me. So I saved up as much money as I could. At the same time, I was booked out like 8 months. And so I knew that this would be a big sacrifice to let go of that finance. And I was really scared. I'm going to California. Like I'm the little fish in like a pond
Mm-hmm.
of like celebrity stylists and people that some of the assistants that come out of in California that if they're assisting somebody who's been very well known out here, they're almost better than some hairdressers that have been doing hair for 20 years, and that was
Mm-hmm.
like intimidating to me.
Mm-hmm.
um but I knew that that was the right choice for me, so I had made a plan. I met my friend Graham Nation, and we started teaching together. And he was like, "There's somebody opening up a salon out there," and I didn't think California would ever be an option, but I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna go meet him." So I met Daniel Mora, and he's Daniel M Beauty on Instagram, and he was so cool, and I immediately fell in love with California. I think there's certain aspects of LA besides just being a new place where I felt a crazy amount of peace and like happiness. Like it reminded me of Italy, the mountains, the palm trees, um, this really tiny road. Sometimes those little things kind of reminded me of home, and
Mm.
so I like made the decision to move out there, and I don't regret it. It's been really amazing. So many good things have happened to me since I've done that. Um, and it's been really great. I'm very blessed.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, you said that it reminds you of Italy, and I guess I mean I've never thought of that before, but I think you're right. I mean, there does have the dramatic landscape, the
Hmm.
tropical nature, the Mediterranean climate. All of that makes sense. So I'm not surprised to hear you say that, but I am because I've never heard of that before. So how long have you been in LA now?
I moved January of last year, so a little over a year and a half now.
Wow. So you're still new. That's amazing.
Mhm.
Okay, cool. So so what was it like? I mean, you were intimidated, you said.
Yeah.
Did you have a reason to be intimidated? Now that you look back, you're like, silly me? Or were you like, no, it's as cool as I thought it was?
No, it's as cool as I thought it was, and it's humbling. You come out here, you're like, this is going to be hard. I'm going to have to hustle. And it was a very humbling feeling coming out here. Again, like realizing like some of the assistants, like they've been doing hair, now they've been assisting somebody for like 5 years and they're incredible. Like they're amazing. So the standard is very high up here. There's a lot of competition. But it's good. It's healthy. It really pushes you to be better. But I also felt like there aren't a lot of platinum specialists on the west side. I feel like it's more of an East Coast kind of hair. Like you don't. I feel like the west side is more of like beachy, lived in, golden summer vibe, beachy vibe. So what I feel like I brought to LA was something different. That I mean, I can probably name like three or four people in California that do platinum hair, and they're all booked out. So I feel like there is a need for it, but it's also something very different from what everyone else is doing. So that was kind of encouraging to know that I was doing something different.
Yeah. In a place that was, I mean, many people, at risk of like pissing off some of the listeners. I mean, we've been told from many different people, brands around the world that LA is the home of hair. So I'll just say it. And of course, some people will dispute that. And of course, there's no definition of that. So, you could be right too. But there is a lot of stuff that happens there. So to hear you say that is pretty unique. And to come from Florida and to be doing something unique here as one of a few people is pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed a lot of hairdressers here are very well-rounded. They do like brunettes, redheads, like, and if you ever want to, let's say you want to work with celebrities or an agency, from what I've learned from other people, you kind of have to be more well-rounded like that. So for me to be basically be doing just like one thing, in the color part of it, like is kind of cool, and I kind of like that because everyone and their mother does balayage. And
Right.
I mean, I think that's great. And I was just like, I need to find a way to stand out. I'm bored. I'm tired of doing the same thing. I kind of want to do something more challenging. And um, so I love platinum hair. It's exciting to me. It gives me anxiety a little bit, but it's good. I enjoy it.
So you mentioned Guy Tang, who also came from another state to LA and worked in our West Hollywood salon for many, many, many years. And he was doing platinum. And one of the things that helped him do those types of color transformations was the bond builder that came out, of course, Olaplex, in 2014 or so. Do you use bond builders and what you do?
No, I use lighteners that have bond builder in it. But
Yes.
I think there's a place for them. I just I don't know. I just don't use them. I think it's great for people who do use them. I just feel like I don't know. Like if you, I feel like when I was using Olaplex, like it was I would I would kind of push the limit to what I could do with the product. So I was, oh yeah, I can leave it in, put it under heat, like because there's Olaplex. It's kind of like driving a car. Well, I have, insurance. I could drive recklessly. And that's exactly what was happening. Doesn't mean you're not going to get into a car accident. So I
Yep.
think I kind of relied on it too much and I kind of had to take it back to uh, like a simpler way of doing hair. Like if the hair isn't compromised, don't bleach it. And that honestly has saved me more damage, because there's always a risk of damage with platinum. But I think that people who do use it should use it. I just have found that it doesn't really benefit me that much more.
So I'm sorry, you said if the hair is compromised, don't bleach it. So when you're lightening one of your clients to platinum, their hair is always in good shape?
It's in pretty decent shape. I always do a test strand. That test strand is on the hair until it's platinum. If the hair is stretching and breaking, it's a no. I used to not do test strands as much, but it's honestly saved me so many problems that now I do it all the time, and I say no more than I say yes.
I like that.
Like,
That's
yeah,
yeah, test strands and test strands certainly. I mean, we've had so many guests say you got to do test strands, you got to do test strands. Such great advice, and then the saying no is also great advice. But of course, the judgment to know when to push and when to just say no, that comes from experience, probably, doesn't it?
yeah. Once you've fried enough hair off in your career, then you eventually you eventually get it. It hits, you know.
Yeah.
Or if you have to buy hair extensions for somebody, I had to do that once because just push it too far. But they're all learning lessons, and my consultations are very like in depth. So my clients, if a client wants to be mine, they have to fill out a job form, and they have to, there's questions that they have to answer, and then if they're, coming in for, oh, go ahead.
I want to definitely get into
Oh no,
that. I want to get into the consultation because that is
yeah,
part of the judgment of saying no.
sure.
But I don't want to leave the bond builder conversation quite yet, because this is one of those things that has become quasi controversial. And we're a podcast that is not sponsored by anyone. That, there's no money flowing here, so I can speak freely for or against whatever I want, and you can do the same. So, but we do sell bond builders. We sell all of the bond builders in our salons, and the topic of bond builders has become a little bit controversial now. And, you've got Olaplex, which was the first one and created the category, sold all over the world. And Dean was delivering the stuff to my salon in West Hollywood in 2014 and before, and it caught fire, and we were doing all sorts of education, and it was helping hairstylists and all that. And then fast forward to where it is now, Dean sold it. It's gone public. It's a multi-billion-dollar business. There's a corporatization, professionalization, call it what you want. And then you've got K18 coming in with their products, another kind of professional corporate sort of, entity trying to put out better products. And then you've got all sorts of other bond building products out there, all claiming to do a better job of building those disulfide bonds than the next guy, even though many of them use the same acid ingredients. Olaplex a little bit different. Have you gone through the process of experimentation?
Yeah, I tried K18 a little bit, but I don't think I tried it enough to really get an idea. I think they're all great. I just I just don't think I need them.
You don't need them. And you don't need them because you're using developer with bond building in it. And there's a lot of products out there where the bond building elements, typically it's maleic acid or another version of acid that's put into it that has the bond building components. Like Shades EQ now has bond building components. Wella has added bond building components to their color. So in some cases it's in the lightener, in some cases it's in the color or the toner, and then of course there's 400 different shampoos and conditioners with bond builders in them. In fact, the co-founder of Olaplex, a guy named Eric Presley, has come up with his own bond building product called Epres. And I just got a box, and we're going to test it out and see if people like it. But it's interesting to see people's behavior with the bond building products, because in the last 6 months or so, people have been buying less of them. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. Why do you think it is? I've
Well,
never heard of that. I thought people are using them more.
I think it's just what you said. I think there's bond building functions or bond building qualities in a lot of the inputs already, whether it's the lightener or the color itself. I suspect that people have realized that maybe they don't need as much Olaplex, or maybe they don't need K18. That is what I suspect. I could be totally wrong, because as much as you tell me what you're doing, I speak to another hairstylist and they're like, oh, I have to use Olaplex, or I have to use K18 and all that. There's a little bit of a learning curve, right? Because if you use Olaplex, it changes things a little bit. It changes the results, changes the time.
Yeah.
K18 says that theirs changes a little bit less, or a little bit differently. So there's a little bit of a learning curve.
I think it's kind of like when people can't have to do when they do color, they have to shadow root. Like it doesn't matter if she's a natural level 8, they have to shadow root no matter what. Like I think it's kind of a little bit like that. And maybe it's because I was trained with more of an old school mentality to just stick with the basics, quality over everything. Like I don't ever shadow root anymore. Just like I don't use a bond builder. And so I feel like it's kind of like the same. People view it almost like a crutch. Like they tell themselves, I need to use a bond builder 24/7. I have to shadow root 24/7. I have to tone all the time. And they see it like it's the only way. But the hair always looks amazing. But it's like you don't have to. And because everybody and their mother is doing it, it's like there's this peer pressure that you have to do it.
Interesting.
Once I stopped shadow rooting, my blondes came out way better because I feel like I learned this from a stylist named Brianna. She literally was like, what does your work look like without a shadow root? And it kind of pushed me, like, if I didn't have it, my highlights would look terrible. So it
Yeah.
pushed me to like focus more on like what really matters. So with the same thing with like people using Olaplex and all these treatments, like there's like it can be more simple than that. You don't have to use those things, but it becomes like a crutch, I think. But that's just kind of my viewpoint. I don't
Yeah.
know. Maybe it's just because of how I was taught, but
No, I totally appreciate that. I bet if we had another colorist on here right now who uses Olaplex or K18 or XYZ, I wonder if they would say, well, I can charge my clients more if I'm using Olaplex, because I tell them
you
I'm
have
using
to.
Olaplex.
Yeah, you have to. It costs so much.
Yeah.
And the prices are already high for people. People are like $500 for a full highlight. Are you insane? And I'm like, I wish I didn't have to charge that much, but the cost of living is so high, so it does increase your service, but you have to charge for it because the products themselves are expensive, you know?
Yeah, I know. And they go up every
Yeah.
year, by the way. They don't stay, Olaplex intro kit doesn't stay at $200 every year. It goes up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I'm thinking
So,
like if I had to use Olaplex and I was doing a platinum session, let's say 'cause I normally in a platinum session will use like a whole canister of bleach. And let's say like we used to charge $25 per ounce in addition to your bowl. So let's say you do 10 bowls, you're charging them a lot of money just for that Olaplex. My price would almost double if I had to use Olaplex. I mean,
wow.
technically, if I'm supposed to like, it would just be it would be too much, but to each their own. But I do like hearing different opinions on people using Olaplex and yeah,
And this is why I bring it up, because it seems it seems like the opinions are so sporadic. And now that it's become really big business, billions of dollars worth of business, it's very interesting to hear, on the ground level, why are people using it or not using it. And there's a lot of people, in the finance community on Wall Street trying to figure out, why are people using less Olaplex? Because you can buy the stock. You can make money if you buy the stock low and then it goes up, or you can make money if you sell it short. So they want to know, why is Abigail not using it or using it, times, all of the million hairstylists or so in the United States. And it's really hard to get any sort of consensus on, how and whether and why to use bond builders, which I just think is utterly fascinating. Okay. Do you have any response to that?
Now, there's so many ways to do hair though, so it's like, everyone's gonna do what they want at the end of the day.
Right.
But some people don't even know why they're using stuff, just like you said. Like, why am I even using this? That's what I
Yeah.
got. I got to that point where I was like, I feel like I'm burning more hair off now using this magical product. But also because of how I used it. So everyone uses products differently. But I just felt like for me, it didn't really benefit me anymore.
So I want to go back to what you were saying before about just saying no. Just saying no is, I mean, part of just saying no is knowing what to say yes or no to, and part of that is the consultation. So start that explanation again. How do you, begin that engagement of kind of discovery with a new client, and what leads you to say yes or no?
Well, the first thing is like, obviously the test round is really important, but just talking about their hair history, what they've done to it, as much as they can remember. But then the test run will tell them the truth. And I sometimes my consultations are like 2 hours because if I have to lift level three hair, like I'm gonna lift it until it's white. And if it can't even get to a level nine, then there's something going on. And that is proof to me and to my client that this can happen and this cannot happen. Another reason why I may say no isn't just like if there's color on it, but I feel like I can't cut any hair off. If they have that kind of vibe, the length is more important, then I'm gonna like save them from that. Because I know for a fact like you have to be open to at least cutting 3 to 4 inches off. I will try my best to keep it as long as possible, but I'm not gonna sit here and like tell you, oh yeah, it's gonna be fine when I know the like ends are toast. So if a client's like, oh, I don't want to cut hair, then I just am honest with them and say, well, just wait a couple more months until you're willing to cut. Um, and they don't really appreciate that. Like they're not like mad about it. I mean, some people can be bummed out about it, but we give them different options. But if their ultimate goal is platinum, I've had to tell people you have to wait a year at least before we even do anything. And if you want to go platinum, like you can't color it, you can't do anything.
Right. Yeah, you can't touch it. You have to wait a year, and you can't mess with it.
No, yeah. Let's put some extensions in. Or I have a girl, she does podcasts, and she, has to have her hair done. So we just do a couple highlights on top. But I'd rather have to mess with those highlights when she comes and wants to go platinum than do it all over the head. So I told her, let's just do a couple on top just to give you a little something. Leave the rest of your hair alone. And now she's got like roots this long, and I can't wait to take her platinum. I think by this time next year she's going to be good to go. But I try to work with people, but at the same time, sometimes you have to say no.
So you were talking earlier before I interrupted you rudely and brought you back to the bond builder conversation. You were
Oh, it's
talking
all good.
about kind of a form that you have your clients fill out. Talk about that.
Yeah, so I've had them fill out this form. I charge $50 for a consultation. It's just for the consultation. I started doing that when my Instagram really started growing in 2020. And it was because I was doing like 6 consultations a day and two would book. And the thing is, I kind of view like client relationships a little bit like dating app. Okay. If you put on the app, I'm looking for a relationship, whoever doesn't want that is going to swipe left. But there's people who just want to play around, and there's people who want like a situationship, and clients are the same way. There's some people that just want to take up your time and talk to you and get your advice. And then there's people who just want to like go for whatever's available the fastest. But I don't want that. I want a real client relationship, someone who's going to dedicate their time and takes this process seriously. So by me putting a $50 fee there, it basically sifts through all the people that are just looking to shop, which shopping is fine. I'm just at a different point in my career now where I don't want to make time for that anymore. Anyway, that whole like
Yeah.
relationship thing made sense in my mind, but that's kind of how I see it is that I don't want people to waste my time and I don't want to waste their time. And a lot of people like to shop. So I do the job form, they fill it out, they pay $50, and then I reach out. It says at the end, like, Abigail will reach out to you within 24 to 72 hours. I text them, so they have my personal number. And I like that because it's kind of like a perk, a process. Okay, now I have a direct line to my hairstylist. And I'm like, okay, hi, thank you for submitting your form. I always say with their name because anytime I go back in after the consultation, I can find the text message really easily. And I ask when they want to come in for a consultation. If they're flying from out of town, we'll do a virtual consultation first. And if I see that they need to do a test strand, I highly advise that they do. They go to a salon in the area to get a test strand done. And,
Oh,
I
whoa,
tell them like,
whoa,
hey, listen,
whoa,
you're not,
whoa. Hold on, hold on, hold on. Okay. So virtual consultation is you're looking at them on FaceTime.
yeah. So we'll do
Okay.
like a FaceTime consult. And then if I see that their hair needs a test strand done before they fly out to LA, then I like tell them to go to a salon in their town to get a test strand done and to buy some product from them because you're obviously not getting your hair done with them. So as a way to thank the salon. And then either they can send me pictures or the salon can send me photos. Sometimes I'll contact the salon myself and just do this for my client. And I've had a good experience with it. I've never really had any issues with that.
So do you
And I just
do
tell
you
it,
tell them do you tell them to ask the salon to do a test with certain products, certain like level of lifting, like what instruction do you give? Because you have another hairstylist who probably wants to do the lightening themselves, doing
yeah.
doing the test strand. So I can see that kind of running off the rails a little bit.
Yeah, I that's where I would either contact them myself, or we kind of just leave it in the hands of the stylist. There's only so much that I can do. But when someone's flying from out of town, like they obviously can afford to fly in. I wouldn't say like, "Hey, come in just for the test strand," because that's a lot.
Yeah.
But something is better than nothing. So I'd rather see, what happens. And I'll usually still do a test strand. Like if it turns out fine, I'll do one myself before I even start. But yeah, you don't want to book a whole day for somebody and they end up finding there's some kind of weird color in their hair.
Right.
Because most people, they see a test run and they're like, okay, 10, 20, 30 minutes. That alone will give me an idea, at least.
Okay. Fascinating. I love that. Okay.
If,
Keep going. So okay.
yeah. So if they are local, I advise, even if they're 2 hours away, to come in for a test run. If they want to go platinum blonde, they need a blonding session where it's dimensional, anything drastic, color correction, come in for that. Um, Even if they're just a root touch up, like platinum touch up, I still have them come in because sometimes you can't tell by photos, like if there's bands in the hair and such. And then from there, I give them price. So I always talk about pricing, what the starting cost is for like a platinum session or what their touch up price is. And I make sure to text it to them because sometimes I forget. So I'll go
Sure.
back to the message and say I would text it, hey, Katrina, thanks for submitting your client form. I can just look up Katrina, like, hey, Katrina, thanks for coming in for your consultation. And I will send them just to review this as a pricing we discussed. So I always have that on my phone,
Yep.
um, which is really helpful. So you remember what you were going to charge them.
Oh yeah,
I
it's
don't
huge.
take a
And by
deposit.
the way, and they remember too. Sometimes you might remember, but
Hmm.
they may be like, "Oh, it wasn't 1,000. I thought it was 925." You're like, "Well, no, we have it on
Yeah.
the text." Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's good. Sometimes people forget. So, and I
Yeah.
forget too.
Totally. And
Um,
and and how do you price yourself? I mean, like by the hour
so
or how do you?
So if I'm taking someone platinum, we're doing a blonding session. Um, I have found that I have an average of numbers. So I have an average of how much product I use, an average of time. So instead of basing it on time, I base it more so on product. Normally in a day, a 12-hour day, if I have an assistant, I can take about four full highlights. And each full highlight is about 7 ounces around average that I use of bleach powder alone. So if if I use an entire canister, like I guess what I'm trying to say is four full highlights is one canister of lightener. So my full highlight $150. So if I use an entire canister of lightener, their blonding session starts at 2,200. And so I've made that kind of like my starting day rate because that's the most logical thing. I don't think I've ever used less than a canister, when taking someone platinum blonde because sometimes I'm bleaching multiple times. So you're going through a lot of product.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so let's say I use a canister and a half, and it's my day rate and a half. And if I had to break it down to my client, I could. There's just two different ways that I could break it down to them. It's either, well, this is, I could take four people instead of only taking one, or we use this amount of product on four people and we use this amount of product on you. Um, and I actually have a little form that I give out in my classes that helps people figure out their day rate depending on what their services already are. So your highlight could be $150 to figure out your day rate from that. And I feel like that's kind of simplified it for me with pricing.
What are you seeing behind the chair these days? What like in terms of client behavior? Are most of your clients? You said you like to have a relationship with your client. The relationship that you have with your particular platinum services is this: you take a new client platinum and then you touch them up every so often. Is that typically how it works?
Yeah, every four to
Okay.
8 weeks.
Okay.
Hmm.
And are
Yeah.
you seeing any change in client behavior these days? Like, are people spreading out their typical appointments? Are they coming in normally? Are they still booking ahead and things like that?
My girls typically do book ahead. I don't, I mean, it's hard. Like a lot of people are financially struggling right now. So I'm always very aware of that. But like the clients that are platinum blonde, they definitely make their hair a priority. They don't care what they have to do with
Yeah.
their hair is going to get done. So I
Hmm.
think like that makes it easier for me because I don't have to, mother them and be like, you didn't make your appointment. Like they're responsible enough to pre-book their appointments.
Yeah.
Um, if someone stretches it out, I work with them, but if it takes more time, like that's time is money. So if I have to do a double application, we have a service in the salon for that on the computer. And I always tell them like we went 8 weeks, like you're probably gonna have a band because with platinum like white hair, 5 weeks is enough, especially if they have like dark roots like me. If
Hmm.
they're a level 8, like okay, whatever. But if they're dark, like they have to be like ready for that. And if they
Hmm.
skip one or two, like it is what it is. But if they have a habit of it, then I'm always like, oh, we might have to do something else because it's dangerous to like overlap and like so. But
Hmm.
my clients for the most part, we're like friends, and sometimes I'll go get dinner with them or something, and they're on top of their hair schedule for sure.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Have you noticed any things in terms of tipping? Are people tipping more or less? Are they buying more or less retail from you? Any changes in the last, say, 6 months?
Um, no, I mean, I sometimes I don't get tipped, and honestly, like
Yeah.
I don't care. I
Yeah.
appreciate if they do tip me, but I don't expect it. Um, I think even if I spend a whole day on somebody and they don't tip me, I understand. The
Yeah.
culture in the United States is different than all around the world. Like in many places in the world, they don't tip, and so I guess I'm just kind of like I don't expect it. Of course, it kind of feels like oh maybe they didn't like their hair or whatever. So it kind of sucks, especially if you had a slow week. Those tips can really help you out, but I don't expect it. I feel
Yeah.
like it's kind of like the same. Like I have
Yeah.
some clients that tip and then some that don't.
Yeah. Are you doing anything differently? Are you raising your prices? You're still booking the same? No changes in the way that
Yeah,
you operate?
no,
Yeah.
I haven't
Okay.
raised my prices. I've just year and a half, I've kind of come up with the day rate thing, and that kind of eliminated a lot of problems. But yeah, no, I haven't raised anything. I'm pretty content with my prices. I feel like they're justified. Like so, yeah,
Yeah. And I mean, you're pretty new in the market, a year and a half, I think,
yeah.
and in LA. And so, yeah, it seems like you've got everything lined up, which is really, really great. Okay, so you mentioned Instagram. What are you seeing on the gram these days? I mean, you're running your account and you're running Hair Painter. I'm assuming you run Hair Painters.
My assistant Sophia actually does.
Okay.
Is it Hair by Sophia? I think it's Hair by Sophia. So
Okay.
she is in Florida. And
Okay.
she's been like my girl to run hair painters, which has been really good. Um, and then I run my personal account.
Okay. So have you noticed anything different on the gram?
It's harder
Anything
to get your
changed?
stuff out there. Yeah. I would definitely say like Instagram's always changing, so I always like to try different and new things. Try not to get discouraged, but sometimes I'll like work super hard on something and it flops on Instagram. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. So I think that being consistent is always really important, and I feel like reels do the best. So sharing formulas, like tips and tricks, like don't be afraid to share. No one's gonna steal what you do. I always have to like remind myself about it this way, like just because a chef gives you his ingredients to a dish doesn't mean you're gonna be able to recreate it. So me sharing a formula, toner, even step by step, you could try, but it's not going to come out the same unless you were to shadow me for like weeks and really see it. So I think that sharing is a good way to give back, but also it does help your engagement. Like anytime I post a toner or something, people love it. And I think that's great because I love when people share formulas too.
Yeah. And you made reference to Gaiteng and others who were pretty early on
Yeah,
with sharing all that knowledge, right? Hasn't hurt them.
for sure. I think it's good to give, especially if you want to grow on Instagram, which I mean that opens up opportunities for other things for you. But if you're trying to like, and you have to think about too, like, are you wanting to teach clients or are you wanting to teach hairdressers? So your content, like mine's like a little bit in between, but it's
Right.
mostly geared towards hairdressers now. Before it was more towards clients. But I think like sharing like formulas, maybe just like showing people how you do like a little balayage. Just say if you're doing balayage, like how you do a little bleach wash on the hair, or how you shadow root and how you get that like perfect blend, like things like that. People love that stuff. And when you're doing a tutorial of how you curl your own hair, or like how you purple shampoo your hair, whatever, like all of that is gonna help if you're wanting your page to grow. It's always gonna help.
Yeah. You mix it up really well. I mean, you've got a lot of stuff on here for clients looking for things that they might want. And you've got a lot of
Mhm.
technical stuff on here, which I'm not surprised people like a lot. For the record, your assistant's Instagram is hair by Sophia underscore, and it looks like one of those long underscores.
I'm good. Yeah, you found her. She's in
Yes,
Orlando, right?
she's in Orlando. Yeah. Well, so if
Yep.
the listeners want to see her, and of course they should go to Hair Painters, and it's Hair Painters is obviously Hair Painters, and then it has you, Abigail Bazzoli, on there, and assistant hair by Sophia underscore. And so, what is the goal with Hair Painters? I mean, there's what do we call these aggregator sites, aggregator pages. We have some. We have a few, and they're super fun. I mean, you could put stuff on here that you could put hair on here that nobody's ever seen. I mean, some of the stuff is amazing, So it's fun to scroll
Yeah.
these pages, a page like this. When did you start this?
I started in 2016. I was bored. I'm like, so it was supposed to be between hair painters and painted canvas. And I talked to my mom. She's like, I don't know what painted canvas is. Hair painters is way more simple. And I'm like, okay, I want it to be artistic. I just went with hair painters. Surprised that the username was available. And then I just started
Yeah.
posting like Guy Tang, of course, like Nikki Lee and Rihanna from
Mm-hmm.
901. Love
Sure.
them. Just everybody. Josie Valet, who I recently got to collaborate with, Be Seen and Lynn, or Be Seen and Maggie, like all those
Mm-hmm.
people. So, and then people started tagging hair painters, and it was really, really cool. Like, they just started like tagging the page. I'm like, oh, maybe I can start posting about it. I did create like a little blog at one point. We had like stylist of the month, but I kind of gave up after like 2 years. I was like, I'm tired of this. I don't want to keep doing this. But
Yeah. It's a lot of work.
it was, it is. I had to like find the stylist, reach out to them, interview them, and then I would send everything to my uncle who runs both of my websites, and he would post it. And I was just like, at one point, I was just like, I'm gonna just focus on my career. But I have no idea where I'm taking hair painters. I just tell Sophie, post like pretty work, get people like
Yeah.
inspired, and That's all. I feel like that's good enough for me.
Yeah. Post cool shit.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I love it. What about TikTok? Are you on TikTok?
Yeah, but I'm scared.
Uh-oh.
I'm scared of
Scared of what?
TikTok.
The
So
Chinese?
no, no, I'm scared people can get really mean. Um,
Oh,
I feel like if I post like, oh, I charge $800 for this color correction, people are like coming at you with like pitchforks, like, how dare you? You are just a silly hairdresser charging all this. I'm just exaggerating, but like some people get really upset. But I feel like
yeah.
that's the content that did the best on my page. So I kind of
Well,
like stopped sharing pricing because it just like brought this negative attention and
yeah.
I just didn't like
Yeah.
it. But
I get that.
TikTok is
And
good, just the audience is different.
and those are people who are not living in a very, very expensive place to live, like Los Angeles is, right? They could be living in a place that costs half as much.
Well,
Yeah.
and I think it irks and makes people mad that hairdressers make money, you know? I really think that for some people they just still living in this 2002 like mindset where they're hairdresser. Even think of movies. I think I saw it on Instagram. Somebody posted a really cool reel, like how they made, like how they portray hairdressers in movies. I think it's kind
Yeah.
of funny. I don't really take offense to it, but they really make them look like they're just like, oh, they're just playing with hair. Like they don't take it seriously. So
Right.
I get why people like don't take hairdressers seriously, especially if they live in a small town. They're like, why do I have to pay $30 for a haircut? I can pay $10. So there isn't that appreciation
Right.
for industry everywhere, but I think it's getting better for sure.
That's right. So, yes, the stereotype of our industry is not a positive, historically, is not a positive one. I think it's been improving. I think Instagram has helped that to some degree, that people realize that there is serious work going on here, not just work, but, artistry and science happening to generate these results. And it is absolutely true but it is absolutely true that there is a stereotype out there from the old days. We've been trying to counteract that. As an industry, we've been trying to counteract that for a long time. Hopefully, in 2050, people will consider it a real career.
I mean, yeah, I think people, yeah, they just don't see it as a real job. Like, you didn't go for the school for that long. Why are you charging this much for your time? But it's like because people like it, so I can charge more for it. Like it's just that simple.
Exactly.
Like I have the experience. People like what I do. I'm busy, so I'm gonna charge more for that. Just like Chanel. Like I mean, you can walk into a Chanel store and appreciate that the bag is $10,000. Or I think a bug just went into my okay. Or you can like be like, that's ridiculous. I'm never paying more than $50 for a leather bag. And then there's people who drop that money without even thinking. So like you're gonna have people that appreciate luxury and some people that don't.
100%.
So
What is the most difficult conversation you've ever had with a client behind the chair?
when something doesn't go as planned and you have to redirect, or when you've broken
Yeah.
some hair
Hmm.
and it's not just a little breakage, it's like it's bad. Yeah. And both
Halfway
of
up.
those, it happened to two different people. Yeah. Yeah, the thing is, breakage doesn't just stop after you brush it out. It can continue. Yeah, that's a hard conversation where to be like, yeah, I pushed it too far. I'm gonna have to buy you hair extensions. And when anytime I've messed
Mm.
up that bad, I know some people are like, you should never refund people. I refunded everything. I felt so bad. I'm like, here's your money, and I'm gonna buy you some hair extensions too and put them in for free. But that's the only thing that made me feel better about that situation. Like when you mess up, and it still
Yeah.
like didn't save their hair, like their hair's still gone. So those
Right.
conversations can be hard to have. I think, but everyone's different, you know. I just depends on what you do. For me, it's like I push hair to the extreme every day, so that happens like it's a hard conversation for sure.
Yeah. It's a very complimentary thing being a platinum specialist and an extension artist.
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, for sure.
If you could wave a wand and change anything about the industry at all right now, what would it be?
I don't know. I think it's going pretty good. You know what I love about our
That
industry right now? is the power is in the artist. For so long, like if you wanted to teach, if you wanted to be an educator, you had to like go through all these hoops and like, you know, you had to do all these things with different companies. And now it's like hairdressers are like influencers. They can do so much. Like you can be like a hairdresser for 3 years, and if you're good at taking pictures and getting good content, you could probably have your own class. So I think that's kind of cool.
Do you have any? We already kind of had a hair horror story with the breakage, but typically I ask, a hair horror story specific question. Was there any specific thing that I mean, I'm sure you have so many hair horror stories. Is there any one that just sticks out as being the worst of any experience?
Yeah, I've tried to forget it.
Well, I'm here to bring it up again.
Oh man. Yeah, she probably will never be able to see my face again. It actually happened recently. Not that
Really?
recently, like maybe like 3 years ago. Yeah, I was
Okay.
in Florida. Very sweet lady, and she was like in her 50s, and her hair had already been through a lot. She was on like on a lot of medication, and so she had box colored it. Then there's like different color histories of lightening, darkening, and I was like, all right, she just wanted to have silver hair. So the first session actually went pretty good. I got her to like a level 8, you know? She was so sweet,
From
so
a
kind.
from a what?
And
What was she? What did she come in? What
ooh,
did she come in as?
I would say all over kind of like a 4 or 5 with like
Okay.
little nuggets of orange and like yellow and uh little box color here and there. A magical
Okay.
concoction.
Wow.
Um, so yeah, the first session went good and I should have stopped there. She came back and she's like, let's go a little lighter. I'm like, yeah, let's do a bleach wash. Your hair did so good this time. So I had one of my assistants start to do a bleach wash in the back, but it took her a minute. But like, I was like, it's fine. Her hair can handle it. All the hair in the back ended up like breaking off by the time we rinsed it out. And I remember, I think I had 3 Olivia Garden brushes. I kept grabbing one brand new one because the hair kept filling up the brush. I would like give it to
Wow.
Sophie. I'm like, Sophie, put this brush away. Um, it was really bad. So she was one of them that I had to buy hair extensions for. And I apologize. Like this woman could have sued me if she really wanted to. I wouldn't blame her. Um, but I learned from it. And I don't know what she's up
Test
to in
strands.
life, but yeah, I don't think I did a test right on her. But the thing is, see, the problem was I didn't know when to stop. And I learned that day that it doesn't matter what they want. You are responsible at the end of the day. You can't say, oh, well, she wanted to go later. She asked for it. No. At the end of the day, as hairdressers, we're responsible. So it's better to accept responsibility. Don't gaslight your client and just be like, listen, like, I messed up. I'm going to have to buy you hair extensions. I'm going to refund you. Please don't sue me. Please don't give me a negative review. I'm trying to fix this mistake. And honestly, with that attitude, she was really, really sweet. She was very kind.
Yeah.
She was crying in my chair, rightfully so. But that was kind of sad because that was when I first started teaching, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I feel like I made the biggest mistake. I don't know how this happened. Um, but that was probably the worst one I think I've ever had, and that was yeah, pretty recently, 3 years.
Wow. It's good for people to hear that.
Yeah, don't
That's
be
how
like me.
everybody learns. Yeah.
Yeah,
Don't push it like that.
don't push
All
it.
right. Any last words for the community?
It's been a tough 2 years as hairdressers, and I'm really proud of our industry, how they've stepped it up, and how we all support each other. I feel like more and more people are being kinder to each other on Instagram, and
All
don't get
right.
discouraged because
Yes.
it's a hard industry sometimes. So,
Yep. Yeah, dealing with people is never
absolutely.
easy. Dealing with people is never easy. All right. Amazing, Abigail. Thank you so much for coming on here. You are Abigail Bazzoli, or as I like to say, Bazzoli. And so you've got Abigail Bazzoli on Instagram, And I'm so jealous always when somebody gets their full name on Instagram. There's an Eric Taylor out there, by the way. He's been ghosting Instagram since 2012. Like that was his last post. So I don't even know if he's still around, this dude. But he's squatting on a Instagram handle that I could use.
That could be yours.
It could be mine. Should be mine. And you're hair painters. You run hair painters along with your assistant, hair by Sophia _. So thanks so much for coming on. It was awesome.
Thank you for having me. This was my first podcast. This was so much fun.
Ooh, ooh. Awesome.